During the 2005 to 2006 NBA season, the Miami Heat were a force to be reckoned with, as they were headlined by a slimmed-down Shaquille O'Neal playing at an MVP level and a rising star in the form of Dwayne Wade, who was taking the league by storm. Ultimately, the Heat paved their way to the NBA Finals, where they faced a very talented Dallas Mavericks team led by Dirk Nowitzki. Dallas had won 60 games during the regular season and looked like a team that might be able to claim its first NBA title if it could contain O'Neal and Wade in the finals. The series ultimately went 6 games, featuring some controversial moments and questionable calls, which led then-team owner Mark Cuban to believe it was rigged in Miami's favor. "We hurt in 2006 after it was stolen from us, right?" Cuban said on the DLLS Mavs podcast. "And I'll take that to my grave that it was stolen from us." It comes as no surprise that Wade would take issue with Cuban's stance on what happened in the 2006 finals. The 3-time NBA champion took to his WY Network podcast to fire back at the former Mavericks team owner. Mavs get last laugh versus Heat in 2011. Cuban and the Mavericks got their revenge on Wade and the Heat 5 years later, as the two teams met in the NBA Finals in 2011, resulting in Nowitzki and his squad coming out on top in 6 games. In fact, Cuban couldn't have gotten the last laugh in a better way, with the Heat assembling a super team led by LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and Wade that couldn't contend with the veteran Maverick squad. The Heat were all anyone could talk about during the 2010-11 NBA season, with many anticipating the dynamic trio in Miami winning its first title while building a dynasty. Although Miami went on to win 2 straight titles in 2012 and 2013, the success was short-lived, as James returned to the Cleveland Cavaliers after the 2013-14 season with the Heat. The Miami Heat would do well to carry a fast-forward button into the 2025-26 NBA season. And no, its purpose wouldn't be to skip a potentially mundane campaign to find out whether their greatest wishes for the 2026 or 2027 offseason are granted. The Heat have a real chance to make something out of this season and become a factor in the weakened Eastern Conference. For that to happen, though, they need Eric Spoelstra to squeeze every possible ounce of production out of this superstar-less roster. Luckily, maximizing a roster just happens to be a strength of SPO's, and he even has an obvious path toward doing that. That's where the theoretical fast-forward button comes into play. Because whatever Miami plans to do this season, it had better plan on doing it fast. Miami must pick up the pace. When the Heat were busy exceeding expectations during the height of the Jimmy Butler era, they were defined by a methodical, relentless approach. They took their time, picked their spots, and usually out-executed or out-hustled the opposition. They also played as slow as molasses. In fact, you have to bounce back all the way to the 2018-19 season to find the last time the Heat didn't play at a bottom 5 pace. And they were hardly burners in that campaign, ranking 23rd in the category, per NBA.com. That can't possibly be the approach Miami takes into the new season. A slower pace not only prevents them from reaping the rewards of this roster's athleticism, it also highlights the issues they have generating half-court offense. The Heat doesn't have a dynamic playmaker on the roster. They aren't overloaded with players who can routinely win one-on-one matchups. They don't have the kind of basketball magicians who can make something out of nothing. They do, however, have a host of players who are comfortable pushing the ball in space, starting with Tyler Herro and carrying all the way through versatile bigs Nikola Jovic and Bam Adebayo. They also have some absolute net shredders who would benefit from a collective effort of upping the three-point volume. They also have a young nucleus forming, which would benefit from playing instinctive basketball in the open court instead of trying to solve intricate defensive puzzles. There are myriad reasons for Miami to consider running more, though it's fair to note that even after Butler's exit last season, the Heat still didn't do much of it. After the All-Star break, this was still the association's 4th slowest offense. It's entirely possible SPO sees something different than I do, and I would never claim to have a better grasp of his roster than he does. Having said that, this offense hasn't been good for a while, and it can no longer count on Butler to persist through all of its rough patches. The Heat have to find a new winning formula, and in my eyes, the best way to do that is letting the green flag drop and getting off to the races. The point guard position has been a long-standing issue for the Miami Heat. Terry Rozier was the latest attempt to find a solution to the primary ball handler role. Unfortunately, that hasn't gone as planned. In a recent article for Bleacher Report, Zach Buckley pinpointed Coby White of the Chicago Bulls as someone who could step into a lead guard role for the Heat. Buckley provided a trade idea, too. Heat gets Coby White. Bulls get Nikola Jovic and Simone Fontecchio. The 25-year-old no longer seems cemented into the long-term plans, due in no small part to the fact that unrestricted free agency awaits him after the upcoming season, Buckley wrote. Maybe that motivates the Bulls brass to get something for White now and not risk losing him for nothing later. They could be getting quite a bit here, as Jovic has flashed a really interesting mix of size, 6 feet 10 inches, shot-making and ball handling, and Fontecchio holds obvious bounce-back potential after losing more than 6 points off of his three-point percentage, 33.5, down from 40.1 in 2023 to 24. White has enjoyed back-to-back impressive seasons for the Bulls. Last season, White averaged 20.4 points, 3.7 rebounds, and 4.5 assists per game. He shot 45.3% from the field and 37% from deep. White is heading toward unrestricted free agency. One reason why the Heat would be unlikely to target White via a trade this season is that he's heading toward unrestricted free agency. Miami would need assurances that he would re-sign with the franchise, especially if they're giving up Jovic as part of the deal. Furthermore, there would need to be a level of confidence that White could slot into Eric Spoelstra's roster. After all, you don't want to sign him to a multi-year deal if he's going to struggle the same way Rozier has. However, if White is willing to re-sign with the Heat, and Miami believes he can be a key part of the roster, then a deal could make sense for both parties. Heat previously refused to trade Jovic. Another stumbling block that Buckley's proposal could encounter is the Heat's unwillingness to trade Jovic. A recent report from Heat insider Barry Jackson noted how the Heat refused to include Jovic in a trade package for Kevin Durant. Per source with direct knowledge, he was willing to offer Wiggins, Rozier, Highsmith, Jacquez, and 20th pick in June's draft for Durant and Cody Martin, Jackson reported via X. Per Shams, Suns wanted Jacquez, Jovic, Highsmith, 20th pick and a pick swap, as well as Wiggins/Rozier inclusion. So Jovic and Kaspar's J need to work out for justify the decision, which was a difficult one for Heat to reach. If Pat Riley didn't want to add Jovic into a deal for Durant, it's hard to envision him changing his stance in a move for White. As such, a hypothetical trade offer for White is unlikely to feature Jovic as part of the outgoing package. Clearly, the Heat's front office thinks highly of him. Fortunately for Miami, they have numerous young talents to dangle in a trade. So, if White does become a target for the franchise, they should have enough assets to at least entice the Bulls' front office to the negotiating table.